Dr. Anthony Fauci has been funding research at the Wuhan lab in China and can no longer be trusted. Also, we revisit the laboratory leak theory because of some new data. And more people may have died from this virus than what is actually being shown in the official numbers. Welcome to today's episode of Leading the Way. Alright guys, so let me give you some extra stuff to worry about, right? We know you've been asking for it and you need a little more on your plate because Papa's hungry. Well, you came to the right place because boy do we have a juicy steak of a story for you today. That's right. So Dr. Anthony Fauci, right? Lead doctor at the coronavirus task force. He's always at the White House. He's all over the news. Kind of looks like a mouse, raspy voice. Well, he has directed $7.5 million worth of funds go to the Wuhan lab of virology in China, right? So he's directing $7.5 million worth of funds go to the Wuhan lab in China for research, okay? Still with me? So this research that he is funding is going to bat coronavirus gain of function research, okay? Stay with me. So gain of function research is when you try to make a virus stronger, more deadly, or more viral, so it can spread easily. So Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci, has been sending millions of dollars to China to make a virus more deadly and more spreadable, okay? And guess what? This virus that they've been working on, bat coronaviruses, sound familiar? Sound like anything we're dealing with right now? Maybe like a pandemic, bat coronavirus pandemic, SARS-CoV-2, right? So your tax dollars, right, my tax dollars, are going to the White House through Fauci to China to a Wuhan lab of virology to try to make bat coronaviruses stronger and more deadly. I think we've got it, right? Everybody following me here? Okay. So gain of function in bat coronaviruses, this research is actually very dangerous, okay? And from 2014 to 2017, it was actually shut down, and then they reopened it again. But they're doing this research at a lab that we already know from a few articles is not doing proper techniques, not doing proper safety techniques, not handling things properly, okay? And we know the virus came from Wuhan, China, okay? And we know there's a lab in Wuhan, China that studies virology that is trying to make bat coronaviruses stronger through gain of function research, right? Are any of the pieces coming together for anybody else here? No? No? Okay. This is really, really concerning. And we need to pay attention now more than ever because Dr. Fauci is not able to testify in front of the House this week. And that also is raising some red flags for me personally. But before we make too many decisions, let's get into some of the data, right? Let's jump into this article here, okay? So the first article I want to show you guys is from Newsweek, right? And it was written by a guy named Fred, and it says, Dr. Fauci backed controversial Wuhan lab with millions of US dollars for risky coronavirus research, okay? And here's the little raspy mouse here. And it goes on to say, he's an advisor to the president, and he's kind of an American folk hero because he's been all over the TV and everything. But just last year, he has funded scientists at the Wuhan lab of virology and other institutions for work on gain of function research on bat coronaviruses. Okay, and he spent $7.5 million on this research. And many scientists have criticized gain of function research, which involves manipulating viruses in the lab to explore their potential for infecting humans, because it creates a risk of starting a pandemic from accidental release. Okay, they're saying it right there. It creates risk of starting a pandemic. Okay, gain of function research, very dangerous stuff, right? And now SARS-CoV-2, the virus now causing a global pandemic, is believed to have originated in bats. Okay, Pieces are coming together, right? And the U.S. intelligence is asserting that the coronavirus had occurred naturally. But last month, they conceded that the pandemic may have originated in a leak from a Wuhan lab, okay? So possible, right? Dr. Fauci is not responding to Newsweek, but then they go down here to talk about the research, right? The first part was surveillance of bat coronaviruses. Like they were going out and looking for these things, going in caves and trying to swab to find sick bats, right? And then the second phase included additional surveillance work, but also gain-of-function research for the purpose of understanding how bat coronaviruses can mutate to attack humans. Please read this article. They're spelling it out for us here, right? And the project proposal states we will use S-protein sequence data, infectious clone technology, in vitro and in vivo infection experiments, and analysis of receptor binding to test the hypothesis that percentage divergence thresholds in S-protein sequences predict spillover potential. And in layman terms, that means the ability for the virus to jump from animals to humans. Okay, so the project states that's what they're studying, and according to this guy, he's an expert, right? And he's saying that they're doing these studies, and in the wake of a pandemic, that's a very noteworthy detail, right? People should be paying attention, and this guy, along with a lot of other scientists, have been vocal opponents of gain-of-function research because it risks the risk it presents of creating a pandemic through accidental release from a lab. Okay? Lots of people are talking about this. Lots of very important people say that it's probably not a good idea to be doing gain-of-function research, right? Experts. So let's continue, right? And Fauci has been doing this kind of work for a long time, okay? Very questionable research for a long time. And he's saying that, Dr. Fauci, he's saying that, they're doing this to try to make antiviral medicines to protect us. But, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and they don't have proper antiviral drugs to control the pandemic we're in right now. So not really that helpful, in my opinion. Nevertheless, in 2014, under pressure from the Obama administration, they did shut this down. So it was shut down in 2014, but opened up 3 years later in December. Okay? Now, I'm going to read over this last little part here. We have serious doubts about whether these experiments should be conducted at all, wrote Tom from Johns Hopkins and Mark of Harvard. With deliberations kept behind closed doors, none of us will have the opportunity to understand how the government arrived at these decisions or judge the rigor and integrity of the process. So not only are they doing this stuff, but their processes and their work, they're keeping it secret from many smart people that are doing the same thing. So government's hiding stuff, they're doing dangerous stuff, and we need to pay attention, right? Because Dr. Fauci is in the White House at the highest level. And this is something that might be a little bit concerning to a lot of people in my mind. So let's continue though. All right, so the second article I want to show you, this is one of the longest articles I've ever seen. 64-minute read, right? I did read through all of it. It took me a long time. And I'm not going to go over through the whole thing today, but I want to talk to you about it, right? Because Yuri, the guy who wrote this, is a very smart guy, okay? He started looking at this as a skeptic, right? He thought it couldn't come from a lab. And that's what he talks about down here, right? He started worrying, and he said that's nonsense, right? It couldn't have been caused by a laboratory leak. It doesn't make sense. But then he started looking into it, okay? He started going down the rabbit hole, okay? And this is where the rabbit hole goes, right? Goes through the biology. He goes through all the different data. He goes through the DNA. He goes through every little piece of this virus to try to understand what's happening. And again, I'm not going to read this. I just wanted to show you how long this is. He goes through every argument, guys. Every argument. So if you have some extra time and want to read through some of this, please let me know if you've read this and understand it, because I'd love to talk to somebody about it. And please, comment in the section below if you want to start a conversation about this, or email us. We'd love to start having a conversation about this topic because it's very important. Okay, but let's continue, right? I want to go down to the bottom here, and we're going to read through the summary a little bit. Okay, long article. It's insane how much writing this guy has done. So okay, we've gotten to the end, right? And he says in this summary here, he says, let me be clear, it does not prove that it was synthesized in a laboratory. Yes, as we have seen above, from a technical standpoint, it would not be difficult for a modern virologist to create such a strain. But there's no evidence yet that somebody did this. But he also talks about the opposite point. It's worth repeating too, right? There's no evidence that says it came from the wild. There's no evidence at all. And actually there's stronger evidence that it may have come from a lab because of the way the DNA sequencing comes together, right? And at the end here, he quotes this guy that was in the other article, Ralph Barrick. And what Ralph says is basically that SARS-CoV-2 does not match up, right? It's not identical enough with the species they're saying it may have come from, right? Unless it was manipulated. But they are saying the SARS-CoV-1 from 2003 was identical to the civet strain that it came from. So he's questioning why it doesn't match here, but it matched here, right? So a lot of smart people are asking big questions right now, and we need to pay attention because this is very important, right? So the next thing I want to show you is the official numbers, okay? This is Worldometers, coronavirus cases, okay? And I want to talk through some of these numbers, right? We have 3.5 million cases so far, official numbers. Okay, these are the official numbers. Deaths about 250,000 and 1.1 million recovered. Okay, so the thing I want to show you today is let's go look at Italy, right? Because they've had a lot of issues. They were one of the first countries to suffer this, and what you can see is a very steep upward slope, right? And then you see a gradual decline. So the mitigation efforts that they're doing in Italy is working, right? Because you can see there's a nice trend. It's going down, right? And also with the deaths, the new daily deaths, right? It's a curve up, and then it's a nice trend down. Now, this last day here may have broken the trend, so I'm not sure what's happening here, but you can see very smooth downward trend, okay? Now, I show you that because I want to show you what's going on in the US as well, right? So let's go back to the US numbers, okay? So we're going to click on the US, and what do we see here? What do we see here? We see that there's 1.1 million coronavirus cases in the US. There's been 68,000 deaths, okay? Almost 70,000 deaths, and 180,000 recovered, basically. Okay, but the thing I really want to show you is down here. And this is the new cases, just like I showed you in Italy, right? They had a nice smooth line up, but what's happening here in the US, right? It's not declining like it did in Italy. Okay, it's kind of a plateau more, and not only that, but we're getting jumps here. Okay, like it's not even the peak yet. So the mitigation techniques that we're doing, they're leveling us off, but we're not going down in the trend like we would have hoped for yet, right? So very interesting stuff, right? And the same thing is happening here with the deaths, right? You see a nice slope up, and it looks like, it wanted to come down, but now we're having all these cases pop back up, and that may be because of the protesting. We're not really sure, right? The United States is so big that in different states, different things are happening. So it might be getting better in New York, but maybe in some other states, Michigan, some of the southern states, Georgia, maybe things are getting worse, right? So the balance there is a little bit off, and it's not tapering off like we really want it to, right? But I wanted to show you that because that's the official numbers, right? And the next thing I want to show you, all right, stay with me here, because there is 46,000 missing deaths in what they have found so far in this next metric. Now, what we're looking at is the average death over a long period of time, right? Historical average. This is what normally happens with death in these different countries. It's also showing New York, right? So let's take a look, right? So what they're saying here is, and you can see all these little lines here, is what usually happens, how many people pass away. And you can see that now that coronavirus is here, it is significantly higher than the average that they're used to, right? Germany actually is doing a pretty good job here. Norway is doing a good job. They're not too high up above the average, but a lot of these countries are well above average. And what they're saying in this article is that the hospitals aren't counting everything, okay? They're saying that people may be dying in their homes, they may be dying at the nursing home, other places, and those numbers they're not getting counted, okay? So above the official numbers that you saw, you need to add at least another 50,000 deaths to that. And that's over the world, right? That's not the US, that's over the whole world. And it shows, the difference, excess deaths above normal. And it's even happening in New York. So this could be happening in many other states in the US, but we don't know yet because I don't see the data here on this document. But it's something that's going on, right? And they're saying in poorer countries it's a lot worse, but it's happening in Europe, right? The UK. The UK isn't even starting to come down yet, right? They're still lifting off. But the places that have done better at locking down and social distancing and wearing masks and educating their population, they're doing better, right? Germany's doing pretty well. And Norway's done maybe a better job than anybody. Denmark's also done well. But this is just showing you what it looks like. If we lock everything down, it's working. But what we're doing now in the US, we're not getting that slope like Italy on the way down, right? We're kind of plateau and we may be jumping back up. So we're not over this yet, and we need to pay attention to the numbers because this thing could come back in a second wave. In the 1918 Spanish flu, the second wave was actually much more deadly than the first. So that's something we're keeping an eye on here at Leading the Way, right? Now, before we go, I got to show you a Twitter video, right? So the video I have for you today is very exciting, right? The US Pentagon has finally acknowledged that UFOs are real. And that's what we're going to show you in this video, right? Take a look.
That's not LNS though, is it? It's not. It is LNS, dude. Well, if there's like anything, it's rotated.
Okay, so what you're hearing is the pilots, because they're extremely excited. Now, the guy who caught this was actually on the Rogan podcast, and he talks about it. It's very exciting stuff. And they're talking about how these ships, they stopped on a dime and then started back up and flew up into the middle of the sky so quickly that it's impossible to be normal human technology. And now the Pentagon, the U.S. government's coming out and saying, we don't know what this is either. But so kind of exciting in my mind that we're admitting that UFOs are real and that they were on Earth at some point, right? It's kind of fun, right? So Anyways, I hope this episode helped you today. And, if I would encourage people, if you have some time, drop a comment in the section below and let's start a conversation about some of these articles that we're going over so that I'm not just the only one talking here, right? Anyways, so I hope you had a good time here today, and until next time, my name is David and this has been Leading the Way.